Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. We were actually both just saying how nervous we were.
We were.
Outside.
I still kind of am.
Only one of us put out a book on Tuesday, though. So, Clancy, congratulations on this book. It is so gorgeous. It is so beautiful. It is so thoughtful and important. And I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Of course, yeah. I feel like we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
We worked at the same co-working space and we kind of see each other like, oh, hey, what's up? And then we became friends, and it's really nice.
Totally.
So very happy to be here. So sort of, I guess, broad strokes, for those of you who don't know or, sort of your story, I feel like you're a true multi-hyphenate. You have done it all, you do it all, and that feels in and of itself sort of just deeply impressing, but also overwhelming. Like, how do you do it all? But maybe by starting sort of like where you got your start, food is such a big word that where does one even begin?
One could begin with my first job, period. I worked as a dishwasher in a very cool little gourmet shop in Philly called Foodstuffs in the Art Museum area. And I wasn't really doing anything with food other than washing it off of surfaces like plates.
Yeah, which is a very important step.
But it's an important step. Dishwashers are important. And I also, the owner of the shop would give me this awesome breakfast sausage sandwich, like an egg sandwich, sometimes a sausage. Anyway, they were really good sandwiches. This place sold really great food. And so that kind of was an interesting experience for me.
It's also amazing work ethic. I feel like to start at any level of a restaurant, you sort of see things in a totally different light. I feel like everybody should work back of house in some capacity.
Totally. Then also my parents, I grew up in a restaurant-loving home and a home where I ate very well. My mom was a superb cook. My dad's a pretty great cook too. In college, my first work-study job was manning the stir-fry station at one of the cafeterias, and that was pretty fun, and I liked it. And so those were my first forays into doing something with food. When I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I was taking classes while working at a nonprofit.
Wow.
So that kind of started the doing everything pattern of my life. And the cooking classes stuck, and I was like, I like this. And so then I got an apprenticeship I was like a prep cook at Fork Restaurant, owned by Ellen Yin in Philadelphia. And I worked there for free on the weekends, and I was like, I should go to culinary school. And the chef there was like, you don't have to be a chef, but maybe if you want to be a pastry chef. So that's where I kind of connected the dots with food, pastry, France. Le Cordon Bleu became my destination.
Yeah,
so that was the first steps.
Yeah, that is chapter 1.0.
Exactly.
I feel like we're in chapter 8 right now.
Yeah.
Of many, many chapters. So you work in food, you go to school, you learn sort of the technical aspects of things, and then you write your first, many things happen. You write your first cookbook, Cooking Solo.
Cooking Solo, the joy of cooking for yourself. Yes.
Which, yes, exactly. But yeah, huge question. People are always like, how do you make food for one person? I'm like, have I got a book for you?
Yay.
And that, I'm sure, was its own journey and experience. And shortly after that, well, I guess not so shortly, a few years after that, you decided that you were going to make a magazine.
Yeah, that was kind of a little random. It came to me because I had been approached to do a project on Black women in food for another publication. And that project didn't come to fruition, but I really loved thinking about it, and I started doing research for it, and I started having conversations with other people and meeting new people, and I just thought, I should do this. I really like it. And I had a conversation with my good writer friend, Jeff Gordonier, who I don't know if he's here, but he was like, you should do it yourself. And so I kind of just let the idea simmer for a bit, and I had a little vision board. And then I also thought, how am I going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And so
You're like, wait, this needs money.
Money.
Yeah, that's the worst.
It is. Yeah. Why can't we just barter? But anyway, I did a crowdfunder for it, and that allowed me to print the first issue. And
I mean, that experience alone of just like being like, oh, I don't have to wait for somebody to hand me something. You know, like you can make the thing that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, and in the conversations I had with people kind of in the research phase, people were so excited, and a lot of women I spoke with said, you know, I want to write about this, or I know a great photographer, or I know several great photographers, you should talk to this person, this person, this person. Because the idea was, what if we looked at food through the gaze of Black women and femmes? And so it was just really an expansive research project to just start to meet a lot of people doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we glossed over it, but the title of the magazine
Yes.
is
For the Culture, celebrating Black women and femmes in food and wine.
Which then gave birth to this gorgeous book.
Yes.
So when I first saw the book, I was most impressed by like the pure variety and like abundance of information, personalities, perspectives, that it really does feel like a magazine, but like in a more cohesive sort of book form. And, you know, I'm sure you have another cookbook in you and write recipes, which is really straightforward, but what made you want to decide, or what made you decide that you were going to sort of take the limited, you know, sort of magazine format, which are small, thin, they are, you know, more frequent, and solidify it and make it into this like tome, this beautiful thing?
So here's the tea.
Tell us.
I was working on the magazine, so the crowdfunder ended in 2020, right before the pandemic started. And I was working on the magazine, getting, you know, pitches from writers, photographers, etc. And George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. And for a brief moment in time, Black people became very popular. Across industries. I'm talking clearly food, interior design, you name it.
Yeah.
For about 4 to 6 weeks, Black people were having a moment, and it was a very surreal moment because it was literally because we were a captive audience collectively watching the murder of George Floyd. And so during that time of Black people being popular, my previous publisher reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to do a book with you. And I was like, okay. Meanwhile, I had also turned in a proposal in 2019 that got rejected. So I was like, I did.
By the same publisher?
Yes. I was like, I actually
That is
already,
so weird. The timing on that is
yeah.
so...
I was like, you want to pick up that proposal I sent? But in the summer of 2020, I wasn't as keen on that idea. I was busily producing the first issue For the Culture. So I was like, hey, I'm working on this magazine. It got fully funded. I have to produce it. But if I were going to do a book right now, what I would like to do is a book version of part of the magazine. So the magazine has like several interviews in it. And I was like, what if I did a book of interviews of Black women and femmes in food and wine and hospitality? And I would have recipes from them. And so it would be interviews, recipes, and then personal essays on culinary matriarchs who are no longer with us. And they were in favor of it. And I was just like, yay, this is what I can do right now. This is what my capacity is. And so that is how the book came to be.
Right. And I'm sure that came with like complicated feelings of like, why now?
Oh my
is
gosh.
This? And then,
yeah.
But to turn that into something like very important, I feel like is the best case scenario. And I've heard you speak a lot about why you wrote the book, like why it feels important. You've written about it in here, of just sort of wishing that you had role models, that you, when you were starting out with food and sort of your career path and like, what am I going to do with this love of this thing? If there was anybody out there that could sort of give you perspective or advice or any sort of meaningful words of direction, but there wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I came up very much obsessed with B. Smith. I would say B. Smith was my initial North Star, just because I still am a restaurant lover, but like I grew up going to restaurants with my parents, and we would go to B. Smith. We went to B. Smith's restaurant when I graduated from college. So she was kind of the only person I knew of and kind of looked up to. And then I just thought, well, there are a lot of other there have to be a lot of other people. And what if I ask people who they look up to? You know what I mean? And so, and of course, over the years, I was introduced to the work of Edna Lewis, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Leah Chase 3 times. And
Wow.
so, like, my knowledge grew, but I really wanted to expand on that and just reach out and kind of create community and share spotlight with people, put the spotlight on people whose stories might be erased, and also put the spotlight on people who are doing amazing things and maybe their stories aren't celebrated as much or as much as I think they should be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what people learned in 2020, especially with media and media coverage, is like you can't rely on somebody else to do that for you. Or like the
Yeah.
people at the top of certain places, it's like very tough to penetrate. And so you sort of created your own destiny for that, which is like, I can't imagine. And it's like the result of it is so important, is going to help so many people. I mean, it's like such a great source of information, like logistically, but also recipe-wise and like history, and there's so much going on. And something that I feel like struck me about you doing this project in the first place is that we live in a very sort of like personal brand centric culture, especially now. And I think that most people, and Sophia Rowe speaks about it in this book, where it's like most people under the age of 25, if there's anybody here under the age of 25, let me know. But it's like, what do you want to be? You know, and they're like, oh, I want to be a celebrity, or I want to be an influencer, and especially with people in food, and they think that they're gonna get a TikTok and they're gonna make recipes and they're gonna become famous. And you decided to sort of have that moment for yourself, of course, but also like use your opportunity to do something and shine the light on other people, which is so much more useful than you carving a carrot into a shape on TikTok or something. I don't know what people do there. What was the process of selecting the interviewees? Like, how did you narrow it down? Because, you know, it really does run the gamut of food, wine, hospitality, and people that are no longer with us, sort of new generation. Like, how do you create like a cohesive collection of people?
I don't know if this is embarrassing, but Instagram helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, who do I follow? And then also who do I already have a rapport with, and who would I like to have a rapport with? You know what I mean? Like, there's some people in the book who I actually still haven't met in real life.
Oh, fun.
Like Aisha Curry, I interviewed over Zoom. But I think she does cool stuff. So I was like, it would be really neat to interview her and see, you know, what is her story? What does she have to say? So there are people like that, people who I have not met. And then there are people, I also wanted to involve friends, people who I think there's a quote that comes around every so often on Instagram about the importance of working with your friends and including them in things. And I just feel like, I felt like it would be nice to include people who I'm purely friends with and also deeply admire. So like Crystal Mack is a lovely friend who has a really amazing story in food. So people I don't know, people who are friends, people who I kind of have an Instagram friendship with.
It's real. The internet is real now. We
Yeah,
live there, and that's where our friends are.
Exactly. Yeah, it's it's the mind meld. So that, and then also people who I've never met, but like maybe I've seen somebody go to somebody's pop-up, and it's like, oh, I would like to learn more about this person. And I also wanted to have different age ranges, different generations, people who are really well known, because I had to have some, like, I admire everyone in the book, but I also was just like, not everyone is going to recognize everyone in the book, so I want to have some recognizable people. And then I also want to feel like people who are not as well known are getting some shine. And
Yeah, well, they also like tell the complete story.
exactly.
You know, a lot of people talk in this book about standing on the shoulders of people and like how important it is to recognize people that came before them,
Yeah.
to allow them to do what they do in whatever part of hospitality. But it sort of really does paint a complete picture.
Yeah,
And I feel like, whatever, the magazine, how that will evolve over time. And like there's always opportunities to, feature somebody brand new and like doing this one really niche thing, but this feels like a very complete picture of everybody. So you didn't meet everybody. How did you conduct most of the interviews?
So I conducted interviews in 3 ways: over Zoom, some of them were in person. There were actually 4 ways. Some of them were over the phone, and then some very dear, amazing people actually just filled out my questionnaire.
Like with a pen?
Yeah, well, not with a pen.
Oh.
But like,
I
know.
know,
I'm like,
I don't know why I went to like.
So I should have done type.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they typed it out. And they would send it to, I think maybe 5 to 6 people just responded to the questions over email. So the other 60 people I interviewed through phone, computer, etc.
That's nice. I feel like when you get to talking to somebody so often, you're like, oh my God, I have like 8 pages worth of stuff.
Yeah.
How was that editing process? Because obviously so different than editing a cookbook where you're like, okay, I'm trimming the head note, I'm trimming the recipe, blah, blah, blah. But to edit other people's stories and like for you to ultimately decide like what makes it in is a lot of responsibility. But also you're like, oh, but the story's so good. And you're like, oh, I really can't afford an extra quarter page here. You know, it's like, can be tough.
It was really, really hard. It was the hardest part because I loved every conversation, but some conversations were 15 minutes and some conversations were 2 hours. So that and I tend towards more. I think more is good.
More is more.
More is more. So it was really hard. And my editor was like, okay, so we have to cut about 100 pages. And
you're like, I'll save it for the magazine.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was hard. And I think my editor was very helpful in kind of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, okay, some of this has to go. So yeah, I kind of tried to keep the juiciest bits. And that was my guiding force. Like it was all juicy, but it's like, okay, this is extra juicy.
Yeah, we love extra juicy.
Yeah.
So how did you, I guess in answering that question for yourself, when it's just like you and the manuscript, I imagine you had to repeatedly sort of ask yourself, okay, like, what is my North Star? What is this book about? Who is it for? So how would you like distill either of those questions?
I wanted to definitely keep people's stories. So that question, how did you begin? That was very clear that it has to stay in. And then I think one of the things that gets talked about a little but not enough is mental health in the service industries and, you know, in restaurants, just in the food world. So I wanted to keep that. And then I was so impressed with people's responses to everything, but the different approaches to caring for oneself. So I was like, this is information people need to know about. Also the money questions, because I'm always like, how are you doing it? Because I'm just making it up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have those nuggets of wisdom. So like, I guess my guiding star was, or North Star was sharing the story. How did you begin and other parts of that? And then what is some wisdom you can share? And that's not just for readers, it's also for me. You know, like I also need help.
Yeah, it's like kind of amazing to think about you setting up to write this. It's like, oh, I just wrote this for me. Like I just wrote this so that I could talk to my favorite people and get all their advice to like, you know, but it is so generous of you to share it with everybody. But I also loved the question that opens a lot of the interviews, which is, how would you describe your work? Because so often I feel like, especially in a place like New York, we meet someone, it's like, so what do you do? And what do you do is like almost, not like aggressive, but it's like, what do you do? Like, you know? And it's like, well, how would you describe your work as so like graceful and open-ended? Because it can mean so many different things. And as a result, you get so many different answers. So I imagine in your interview process, you go in with these sets of questions and stuff like that. But how often did your questions just change and morph? And you're like, oh, I thought I was going to talk to this person about X, but we ended up at, you know, back to B or whatever.
The conversations definitely were kind of winding roads. And I loved the answers that I got to how would you describe what you do, because I think every single answer really reveals the expansiveness of each individual person in the book and the expansiveness of their stories and the options, and the fact that not every path is straight and linear. A lot of times the conversations would lead to or include, I'm still figuring it out, Like, I think most people talked about their own evolving paths and improvising. That was a common theme. But also, everyone is so wildly talented, so kind of really just being nimble and figuring it out, having a plan, but then having plans not work out. Also having a plan and having them work out and deciding you want to do something else. But kind of a changeability and like a willingness to be flexible. That was a theme. And also creating a life that you want to live. That was kind of a common.
Which goes back to the mental health thing, I think.
Yeah.
Often. Like the pressure to do something, be something, fit into like a mold. And so many people, especially in this book, were just like, no, actually, that's not what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
And it's ridiculously inspiring. I feel like there's also, of course, to early in the conversation, like a lot of heaviness around it, but this book is so joyful and so optimistic. But you're also, I was describing you to somebody the other day, and I was like, she's honestly just like the happiest person I've ever met, or just like exudes joy, and it's just so kind and nice and generous. And so it's funny when you're like, well, I wanted to include my friends, and I'm like, everyone's your friend, because everyone wants to be your friend, because you're truly just like, that kind of person. So imagine it wasn't difficult to put these people in.
Well, it was. Well, thank you, first of all. That's very kind.
You're very welcome.
And also, I feel like the spirit, I want to give a shout out and props to George McCalman, who is the creative director of the book, and got it, like totally got where I was coming from.
What was your directive? Like when you were having those early sort of creative conversations of like, okay, this is not the magazine, it's the book. How's it going to feel? How's it going to read? Because you're like, okay, it's recipes, but it's also interviews, but it's also essays, but it's also illustrations, but it's also photos. Like, what was on your mood board?
Well, here's the thing. George changed my mind, because going into this, I had my vision, and George was kind of like, no. He's like, it's not going to work. Because I was really, really attached to photography. And he's like, let me tell you all the reasons why this isn't going to work and why, I want you to consider.
Like you wanted portraits instead of the illustrations.
Exactly. So I think there's a certain buoyancy because of his direction, because of his design. Sarah Madden did the stunning illustrations.
They're beautiful.
And so I feel like there was a unity of vision, thanks to George, thanks to Sarah, and Kelly Marshall's amazing photographer, like the whole team, Monica, Elisa, Martha, like everybody got it. But I really feel like in terms of the look and feel of the book, George really brought that joyful visual.
Yeah, it also just does a great job of like breaking the form, which is, I feel like, something anybody who makes books thinks about. And especially within the context of cookbooks, because there's so much opportunity for visual dynamicism, and it like really delivers and feels very unique.
Yay, that is the goal.
It is, well, it is. From content to also design. In your process of doing this, you could never pick a favorite person or a favorite recipe or anything, and I'm sure if you asked the same question a week from now, you would have a different answer, but was there anybody that sort of surprised you, again, sort of thinking you were going in for one thing and came out with an entirely different perspective on, or you're like, wow, I learned from that, like in an intense way?
Okay, so in terms of one of the people I wrote about for the essays, Lena Richard, I came to know Lena Richard late, like literally 5 years ago. I was at a talk with Dr. Jessica B. Harris was giving a talk. I was present, and she talked about Lena Richard, and she talked about Lena Richard having a show 15 years before Julia Child, and I was just like, what, huh?
Who's that?
In the South, and so that was a light bulb moment. So her story I just find really fascinating. She's no longer living, but everything that she did, and the fact that she was in Louisiana in segregated South back in the day and had a whole empire, cookbooks, show, culinary school, restaurant, just like all these things that influence, the things that a lot of people would aspire to now. She was doing all of this. So that her story
You're
is
like,
really,
why don't more people know about her?
Exactly.
Why don't I know about her? Yeah.
Yeah, so her story. In terms of people I interviewed, something that probably on a weekly basis, I think of something Kia Damone said. I asked her about what she does when she's in a creative rut. And she said, when I'm in a creative rut, I'm butchering what she says. She's like, it's usually because I'm not living my life. Like, I haven't seen my friends, or, I haven't taken care of my home, or like, I haven't gone on a walk or gotten myself ice cream or something. And she's like, so I go and see my friends. I go and like get some gelato. And I'm just like, hearing that, I was just thinking, oh, I should do that. Because I often feel like I'm in a rut, and it's probably because I do have a pile of laundry over here. And all I do is email, or you know what I mean? So that was a piece of wisdom, just live and enjoy your life. It doesn't have to be about productivity all the time. I do think about that once a week, at least.
Very wise.
Yeah.
At a very young age.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would, not that you should skip ahead or anything, just, she's great, one to watch.
Yeah.
For the rest of your process and sort of figuring out how this was going to come to life, like you're obviously going on this book tour and you're like, okay, now I have to be on social media and I have to promote this and I have to do my own PR. And, regardless if you have help, I feel like the person's always sort of really doing their own PR. How did you decide you were going to approach this and talking about the book and like going on this tour and incorporating people into events differently than your first cookbook?
Well, shout out to Mona Creative, because they've really actually helped me create the book tour and kind of think through ideal matches for different places. But I think, so like yesterday we did an event with Shanika Hillocks, Kelly Mitchell, and Kia Damone. So I've wanted to have people who are in wine. So Kelly Mitchell is in wine, because I feel like you can kind of just focus on food, but there are some wine and beverage people in the book. So I wanted to bring that out. I wanted to bring out kind of a multimedia sense. So the producers of High on the Hog, which I feel like is a show that everybody who watches it falls in love with.
It's magical.
So yeah, having an event with Fabienne and Karis made sense. So I was kind of thinking of themes of what is in the book, and then also people who are really great at talking, and also people who have done something that a lot of people have already latched onto, hence High on the Hog, Fabienne and Karis. So I was kind of, and then the design of the book, George and I are going to be talking about it at MOAD, because I feel like the design is really important. So just thinking about what would I like to tease out in the book, or what is something that I would like to introduce in talking about the book that kind of helped to shape who does what where.
Yeah, it really is like a takes the village situation.
Yeah, and of course, who says yes to me asking, can you do this, please?
Everyone, because you're so nice. And everyone loves you, truly. What do you see, how do you see this evolving? Because obviously it started as one thing, it became this other thing. Are you already thinking like, okay, I would love to see it morph into this? Or you were like, I want to go back to the magazine. I want to see it be, more cookbook focused, more interview focused. Like, how did the process of making this inspire you to kind of, okay, who else can I bring into this? Are there people that you've discovered since writing this even that you're like, oh God, I can't believe it, they weren't in the book?
There are a lot of those, actually.
Yeah.
So part of me would like to do, volume 2 of the book. Another part of, there are a lot of things I want to do. Another volume, perhaps, or a few volumes. I would like to do the magazine, but that's going to require fundraising, so it's like, But I also want to do the magazine. I kind of think of this as the magazine in another format, but I want to have, the next issue of the actual magazine. I would love to see this morph into a documentary, or morph and or a podcast, you know? So I would like to see it take different shapes. But those are a few of them.
Yeah, I feel like one thing we've learned in like even experiencing media, whether or not you're making it or not, is that you kind of can't be too many places, and that people consume it and the information in so many different ways that maybe somebody's not, you know, they don't think they're a food person or they're not a cookbook person that would absolutely love this as a podcast. Because to your point earlier, it's like such a resource of information and inspiration to be like, there are other people like you, and if you had had this when you were starting out, maybe you would have ended up in like a completely different place.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, my goal is for it to help. I want it to be interesting to everyone, but I also really am thinking of like the 21-year-olds who are like, I don't know what I want to do, but I kind of like this. Just to know there are so many options, and every single person in that book has the blueprint and is so expansive. And so you can have an expansiveness to how you approach food. So yeah, it would be, I definitely want to see it morph into lots of things.
I do too.
Yeah.
For you.
Thanks.
It's like, honestly, it is so ripe for different types of storytelling. And it's amazing that it was able to be contained like in this physical book. I was listening to a podcast with you recently that you mentioned you were going to a few pop-ups around town, which I don't know if they're still, I don't think he is still cooking here right now.
Her Florida water tour, if you haven't been, first of all, follow Kia Cooks. She has her book coming out, Florida
When
Water
is it
Tour.
coming out?
Yeah, well, she just signed.
Oh, she's writing
she
it.
just got a book deal.
Yeah.
I'm just like already ready for her book tour.
I know.
She just
It's
got the
gonna
book
kill.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's she also has an amazing pop-up, one of my very favorite ones, Florida Water Tour, and she just like will post the next locations randomly, but I went to several over the summer. I feel like she might have some coming up, maybe.
That's possible. Yeah. I mean, I imagine like also you're very, I feel like maybe I'm wanting this for you, or I'm like projecting this on you, but I feel like it must feel so nice to be able to go to these pop-ups and feel like you're supporting people in really deep, meaningful ways, like aside from just going to the pop-up. But I know Kia also is so grateful to have been featured here, and I feel like your relationship means a lot to her.
She's the best. I love her.
But would you ever do like a sort of for the culture pop-up situation?
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I haven't thought about it, but I think that would be a really fun idea, like super fun. Because I also love Anya Peters' pop-up, Kit and Kin, she's in the book. There are a lot of people who do pop-ups in the book. That would be amazing.
How did you sort of expand? Because like when you live in Brooklyn, you're like, oh, I'm going to Kia's pop-up. It's down the street from me. How do you find out about people like beyond your sort of like immediate inner circle? Like, do other people recommend people, and you're like, oh, there's like a whole network?
I think it can be good to stalk on Instagram. So
Yeah.
I'm just like in people's
It can
stories,
be
like, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I'll see somebody doing something that looks fun, and I'm like, I keep a little mental note. Sometimes I write things down, like, oh, or I'll follow a person, and it's just like, oh, I'm going to check out what they're doing because I've never been to that place or thing. Mm-hmm. So that I kind of see what the people I like are doing, and then I follow them.
Yeah, nice. Well, it feels like you sort of ended up in this position of like an editor-in-chief of your own sort of budding media publication. Like it's not, but it is. But it's, I feel like, not something that you set out to do, but now you're doing. Do you feel like a deep sense of responsibility for that, or you're just like, oh, this is really fun, this is like a dream, or you're like, I miss cooking, get me back to the cookbooks?
I do kind of miss cooking. I'm also making it up as I go along.
Oh yeah,
Like
I love to do that.
Yeah, I'm really making it up as I go along. I'm a big believer in just follow your curiosity, see it where it takes you. I wanted to do a book. I wanted to do a magazine. I wanted to do a book. I still want to do the magazine. So I do actually sometimes think I would actually like. I used to have a supper club, and
Wait, when? Was
yeah,
that?
this was
in
in
New
the
York?
early aughts. Yeah,
Oh,
in New
very
York.
early aughts, New York of
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Early aughts in New York City with my good friend Roz, who also went to Columbia, and
Wait,
she's
you have to tell us what it was like. Like what? I must know. What was the name of it?
It was called Global Feast because we both like to travel the globe.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so very like, and Roz is an amazing musician. She lives in California now, but she stayed in New York after Columbia. She had a band, she had several bands, and her drummer was a really great chef. Roz is an incredible singer and musician. So he would do the savory stuff, I would do the desserts. She would either do the music, because that was a thing. We would like have music at every
Was it like
dinner.
linked to the food you were making?
Yes.
You're like, tonight we're going to...
Sometimes, yes. Okay. So we had like a Moroccan night, and or I'll say North African because I asked my Arabic teacher from college, who's from Tunisia, who also has a band. I was like,
wow.
Would you bring your band to my supper club? And he played, and it was awesome. But yeah, so there was a theme loosely for many of the dinners, and it was really, really fun. And I loved that all I had to do was make desserts, and all I had to do was invite a whole bunch of friends. And so it was like feeding our friends. We would obviously ask them to pay, but
you're like, we are friends, but you will be paying for this.
Yeah, totally. Well, because Roz's whole thing, I think we were both very broke at the time. She's like, listen, I'm trying to make some extra money. And I was like, I need that. And she's like, let's do a supper club. And I was like, I'm with it. And so we would have them in nice apartments. We sometimes would ask strangers to use their apartment, not total strangers, but like...
Early aughts indeed. Yeah, no one's doing that anymore.
I know. I went to a dinner party at the loveliest apartment in Soho, and the guy whose apartment it was, I somehow charmed him. And
somehow. It is not a mystery to anyone in this room. You are very charming.
I was like, so me and my friend are doing this supper club. Could you be interested in it? And then my friend Roz is like, I'll take over from here. And the next thing we know, we're doing a party in his huge apartment. We invited like 50 of our friends. And so that was the vibe. Like we invited 40 to 50 friends. We would just ask our friends who had apartments big enough to host 40 people.
It's a great, it's like kind of a scam, but in the best way, where you're like, I'm hosting a supper club. You're like, but I'm really just throwing sick parties, all the time
really
for my
fun.
Friends. And
it was very fun.
Get back into that.
Yeah, we ran out of apartments.
Yeah.
Because not everybody, most people don't have an apartment that can fit 40 to 50 people.
No.
So yeah, we need to find more of them.
Yeah, we'll get Roz back. We'll get the band back together.
Yeah,
We'll figure that out. But also, we were talking backstage in the green room about restaurants and how it's sort of like just a mess, and to even embark on that. But how in the past few years there's been like immense reckonings with like the way that kitchens treat their staff and hours, and as it ties to mental health and things like that. But what else has changed sort of in food, and specifically for Black women, in the past few years that you're like most optimistic about and most excited about, and you're like, wow, that really impressed me and I'm glad that it's different? Or what have you seen?
I think there's a lot of discussions taking place now about equity and like confronting things that are wrong in the hospitality world. Like I constantly look to Ashton Berry in her insights and like analysis, and the fact that not just her, but the fact that lots of people engage with her or are having those conversations themselves. So I think we may not see it in the next like decade, but I feel like there will be changes that make hopefully better workplaces in restaurants and in the service industry in general. So I think what's happening is that there are people like Ashton, people like Crystal Mack. There's so many people who are deciding that people need to be treated well, and we need to talk about these things, and talking about issues is deeply important to face a problem and hopefully address it. And I think these discussions are being led by many people in the book. I also think, I don't know, like the theme that I talked about of so many people trying to build lives that are full and not just service oriented, not just labor oriented, but like full, and lives that support ease and joy and like good mental health. You know, like I think new ways of being are being like modeled by people in this book.
Absolutely. And I think like the absence of sort of like a internet-y, Instagram-y, social media focused content in here is like so many people rejecting that outright and just saying like that's not a part of my plan.
Exactly.
And that doesn't further my happiness, my career, my work, basically.
Exactly.
And I think there's like the work is so much the focus in here, but like how I've never read it in a book, I've never read a book that talks about it so directly in opposition to the way that we live now. And so I think like if this is a catalyst for change, like this will impact a lot of people's lives. I feel like
so.
it will. I mean, not just for the, for that, but for a lot of reasons.
I hope so. Yeah.
I hope you feel really excited.
I am.
I'm really
I'm
proud
very
of yourself.
excited. Yeah.
Somebody was supposed to bring me little note cards, but that's okay.
Oh, they're coming.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Okay, my favorite part of any event is always the Q&A.
Yay.
I just love it so much. And I've never read the questions from a note card, but I do feel like I'm hosting a game show.
I love it.
But this is fantastic. Okay. If you could host a dinner party at your home and invite one person to cook for, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you cook?
I would cook for my crush.
Oh, cook for the crush.
Like, I have 10 of them. But yeah, I would cook for...
Are they alive?
They're alive.
Okay.
This is, anybody who knows me well knows I'm obsessed. I'm kind of pals with him, but I'm obsessed with the musician Nick Hakim.
Okay, do we have his number?
We do. I would totally, this is one of the reasons why I want to keep the magazine going, because I'm like, I want to do interviews with crushes. But,
Okay, new pivot. For the culture is great. We're now talking exclusively to our crushes.
I told you I'm just making things up as I go. But anyway, yeah, that's who I would cook for.
Why? Have you met him?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're
I
friendly.
go to every single one of his concerts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a fan, but you're
Very.
also friendly.
Yeah.
I feel like you just ask him out.
Okay.
I feel like you should just be like, I would like to cook for you.
I should do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use tonight as a catalyst. Think about it.
Yeah.
What would you make him?
That's such a great question. I don't know. I think he might be vegetarian. Oh, he likes Ethiopian food. We had a whole conversation about it. So I would
I'll
make
never
him
forget.
like Dorawat. I would ask my friend Marcus Samuelson, like, teach me how to make really good Dorawat.
Just call up your friend Marcus.
Yeah.
Like we, casual. That's a good resource.
Yeah. I'm on it.
Good. Okay. Wow. We have someone who is 23 in the audience. So I just want to say thank you for coming. Hi, I'm under 25. I'm not, but I'm wondering what nuggets of advice you'd provide to young Black women who are interested in a career in food, in quotation marks, I assume because it's such a broad topic, but do not have formal training or really know what they want to do.
Yes, the book does have those nuggets. Every single person has great advice. One person who's popping into my head right now is Sophia Rowe, because she talks about her start as just kind of winging it and getting a job in a restaurant and not really having the experience, but just working her way up and just working. I feel like that is one of the things I loved about the interview with her. She really emphasizes, I've just been working for a really long time. And I feel like it's not glamorous, it doesn't sound sexy, but just getting a whole bunch of jobs actually teaches you a lot.
Yeah. Like saying yes and like not being so concerned with, is this gonna make me successful? Is this gonna get me to where I'm going? Like just kind of keep it moving.
Totally.
Did you enjoy your culinary school experience?
I loved it.
You
It was
did?
a
Okay.
fairy tale. Yeah. I was in Paris,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also you were there this summer, I saw, and you went to...
In May, yeah. Dijon. This is thanks to my mustard. I was in...
I love that mustard. So
it's so
I get
good.
it. Yeah.
It was an all expenses paid trip, and I already loved my, and now I adore my mustard. It was Dijon, Paris, and a town that I'm blanking on that was amazing, where Cook's Atelier is based.
Yeah, you did
which
the
is
little
like,
cooking school there, right?
oh my gosh, Nancy
I
Meyer's
stalked
moment.
you on the internet too, you know. Not recently, but yeah. Okay, so this is for both of us, but I'll let you take this one. Your favorite restaurant to impress your guest
Oh
when you want a good, dependable meal
gosh.
in a restaurant you haven't been to but it's on your list. You can take one or all three.
Oh, okay. We were just talking about Claude backstage. I haven't been there. I would like to go.
We should go together because I haven't been
Let's go.
either.
Yay.
Friend date. Where do you go when you want like? They wrote good dependable meal, but I'm also like I want to like go even deeper. If you're just like this day was the worst, and you don't have plans with anyone, and you don't want plans with anyone, and you want to go and you want to sit at the bar, or you want to get a table for one, and you want a meal that's going to make you feel good.
I'm going to Romans in Fort Greene.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So the rabbit pasta, so
Yes. Always.
good. Okay, and then to impress someone, say someone out of town, say you're a high-powered stockbroker and it's a closing the deal. I don't know, like what?
You know what I do? I text my friend Jeff Gordonier and I'm like, hey Jeff, where should I go? Because
I want your Rolodex. You like? Okay, so nowhere
Yeah.
specific.
I literally go where, I don't have a specific place. I'm like, where should I have been liking Corner Bar, kind of. I also have been going to the same places, i.e. Romans. So yeah, it changes. There's no specific place
Okay.
at all.
I feel like that is impressive when you can walk into a place with confidence and feel like I can vouch for the food here.
Yeah.
That is impressive to me.
1000%.
And I feel that way.
Yeah.
I like to go to Hearts and I go to Servos a
Yeah.
lot. but
Yeah. Totally.
I'm a creature of habit. Also, the martini at Raoul's. That's like a good
Yes.
bad day.
A classic.
And if they still have the burger, which is not even that good, honestly, but it somehow hits. And I
Just right.
Yeah. What is your favorite question to ask in an interview? And what are your favorite answers?
I did enjoy asking that how would you describe what you do question. I also really do like to talk about money. So like, your negotiating tips, what are they? What should I be asking?
Yeah.
I like to dive in.
My friend Ortega wrote a book called We Need to Talk About Money.
Yeah.
And it's so good, and it is so direct and so blunt, and it literally describes what is the title. And it does a lot of what you're saying, because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of like,
Yeah.
should I be, where should I be, how did you, like, and it's very, very powerful.
I love it.
Yeah. What are your top 3 cookbook recommendations?
Oh boy, my own.
It literally specifically says not your own smiley face.
okay.
Which smiley face? Very sweet. Thank you.
Oh wow. I love all of your books.
Oh, you can't say that either.
can't-
I think
okay,
it says
all
not
right.
how. Yeah.
I'm going
or
to talk
no.
about some books that are coming out, and also I have a cookbook twin cookbook birthday from Pierre Thiam, Chef Pierre Thiam, who just came out with Simply West African. It's a great book.
That came out this Tuesday.
Yeah, it came out on Tuesday, September 19th. Chef JJ's book Rice, really great. I am really looking forward to Yewande Komalafe's book, Everyday Lagos, I think.
I think Lagos.
Yeah. So those are 3 books.
Great.
2 I have. The 3rd I'm eagerly looking forward to.
I am too. Yewande's insanely talented
Yeah.
and very, very wonderful person. I really
Totally.
adore her. What are your thoughts on food systems and sustainability?
Oh, I feel like that's a whole conversation.
Join us tomorrow for food systems and sustainability. No. You could I feel like you could take one part of, food system, a
Yeah.
broad term, obviously, but what does food systems mean to you, and like, where do you see it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think of farmers. I there's so much I think of. When I think of food systems, it starts with me thinking about farmers. And then it starts with me thinking about like the livelihoods of farmers. And I just think of food chains, how food gets to us and who is being mistreated. That's what I think of. And how can we fix that?
Yeah.
I don't have answers, but that's when I think food systems, that's
Yeah, I
what I'm
think,
thinking.
unfortunately, my mind always goes back to politics. I'm like, oh, farmers, fair wages, politics. Like, it
Yeah.
kind of always trickles down to government or politics and lobbyists, and it's a very sort of daunting thing. But I think the progress being made of even discussing it is a start.
Yeah, for sure. I turn to other people who are experts to learn more, and because I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that work specifically in government for like the policy change, which are, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
Same.
Hi, Clancy. Anna Salper, 96.
Oh, Anna! Yay! Roar lines roar.
What surprised you the most during the course of your research of the book? Also, congrats.
Thanks. I would say, yay, Columbia in the house. I would say Lena Richard. Like that, her story really impresses me, and it is a story that I learned the most about most recently. So Lena Richard.
Yeah, I feel like finding out about somebody who's so impactful and you were like, how did this slip through the cracks? Like,
Exactly.
is a real wake up of just like, we need to talk about people a lot more and a lot louder and sort of do a better job of discussing that so their stories don't die.
Yeah, hence the book.
Hence the book, which you can buy now, I think, outside.
Exactly.
And Clancy will sign it for you.
Yeah.
Annalisa asks, is there a particular cuisine that inspires you the most? And if so, what is it?
I eat all the cuisines.
Global feast.
Global feast, yeah. They're all delicious. I mean, I haven't had every cuisine, but.
Were there any in the book as you were like, I mean, I'm assuming you sort of asked people like, what recipe would you like to feature? And, was there something that you learned in that process of like, oh, wow, I didn't know that in this place they cooked like this, or?
There's a cool recipe every recipe is great. Jacqueline Greaves has this Caribbean green shrimp she's from Jamaica. And there's so many herbs that I wouldn't necessarily have guessed going into that dish. That was really cool. And then the other day, on Monday, at the launch party, Devon Francis did his twist on it, and it was incredible.
I love Devon.
Yeah, he's great.
What a treasure.
He's amazing.
It's so nice. You get to spend time with so many wonderful, wonderful people.
My goal is just to like, I want to hang out with you.
We know how you started throwing those parties for that supper club. You're like, you're throwing parties. You get it. Which one of your dishes are you bringing to the cookout? Writes Elijah.
Oh, that's probably maybe a dessert. I make some really good chocolate cakes. Oh, wow, that's such a good question. I would bring a lot of things.
Do people, are they like, oh, we hate to ask, or are they like, we love to ask? And like, do they feel like sheepish about asking you to bring something when you go to somebody's house? Sometimes.
But I always feel like that's so unnecessary. Like, I'm happy to bring things. I'm happy to eat all the things. Like, yeah.
Do you feel still like more of an affinity towards desserts and pastry?
Yes. Yeah. I care about dessert deeply.
That's that makes one of us. Oh, great, Jen. We've circled back, and exactly at the amount of time that we had.
Yay.
They're going to kick us off the stage. Clancy, thank you so much for writing this book and for going on this tour and for talking to people. And people are going to learn so much, and I think it will surprise them how much joy it brings them. So thank you for putting it out in the world, and thank you for speaking with me tonight and asking me to be here with you. And it is a pleasure to watch you flourish.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you
And
all
thank
for
you
coming.
all for being here.
Thank you.
Yay! I think we get up
We
now.
did it.
Okay, we walk away now.